Hello and welcome to our How to Hold an Appraisal recorded workshop for managers within Bob ICB. My name is Hermione Dunaway and I'm a Junior OD Partner at NHS South Central and West CSU, and recently I've been working to support the OD team and people team with activities related to the OD plan, recently including the development of the appraisal process and the accompanying workshop and guides, of which we are here for the recorded version today for managers on how to hold an appraisal. So what will we cover today? We'll look at understanding the appraisal process, the key stages of an effective appraisal, the skills that managers might need to consider having or developing for meaningful conversations, and avoiding common pitfalls and the next steps in relation to the appraisal process. Alongside these sessions, we do have some very comprehensive guides and the appraisee sessions as well, the almost reverse version and appraisee guides. These will be on the same page that you've managed to find this recording, and we're making arrangements to get that out soon. This session does cover quite a lot and we'll move through the interactive activities at some pace. So do feel free to pause the video as and when you want to take a break, or as and when you want to go away and try some of the interactive activities within the session. So we'll move on to understanding the appraisal process. So within the new appraisal policy, you'll find the diagram on the right-hand side of the screen here on this slide. And this shows us the elements of the appraisal process and the flows that move into it and which layers affect which area of the cycle. At the top, we have the three interlinking factors: the ICB's vision, the ICB plans and priorities, and the ICB values that are also within this circle here. These three top layers work to inform the directorate plans and objectives within Bob, and therefore any development requirements for the directorate. This then in turn informs the appraisal process and personal development review process. Appraisals or personal development reviews, I'll use the terms interchangeably throughout the recording. This then appraisal meeting should happen between April and May, so that first quarter, the first 8 weeks of the financial year. Once the appraisal meeting has been completed, managers and colleagues and staff members should then be following up on the appraisal meeting with these ongoing review meetings between June and September, or between May and October, depending on when the appraisal meeting's been scheduled. And these meetings are your regular one-to-one meetings that complement the formal appraisal process and should happen monthly or more frequently, depending on the needs of the staff member. Once you've done those regular one-to-one meetings and we've reached the mid-year point of the financial year between October and November here, you should consider scheduling the mid-year review meeting, career conversation. And this should support staff and serve as a checkpoint to assess progress that has been made against objectives, provide mid-year feedback, and adjust any goals and objectives if the staff member requires those to be adjusted. This is then reinforced with further one-to-one meetings, taking you all the way up to the start of the cycle again, as this is cyclical, to the new appraisal meeting. The emphasis on this process is to ensure that there is practicing of continuous discussion around performance and development, and supporting our staff members wherever we can. As managers, we play a key role in this process, but it is also a personal responsibility for everyone to take ownership of their career development, and you should be supporting your staff member to do so. So we'll move on to have a look at the appraisal timeline, which are the steps that occur within this top area of the circle. So what do we need to do when we're thinking about approaching appraisal season? We need to set the appraisal meeting date. You need to schedule this in with your team member and encourage them to block out time in their diary to prepare for the meeting. Check they have all the necessary documentation they require and any guides that support it. You should also consider blocking out time in your diary and make sure you have enough time to prepare, our second step, for the meeting, and do any preparation you may want to do, whether that's collecting a copy of the staff member or appraisee's form prior to the meeting so you can prepare some questions and responses and sort of thinking questions to understand more about their thoughts within the form, or whether that's to gather some feedback for them from other colleagues to share with them in the meeting. This then moves us on to step 3, which is conducting that appraisal meeting, and that is where the conversation happens. So although both your staff member, the appraisee, and you as the appraiser will have done some preparation ahead of it to collect feedback, reflect on the year, step 3 is where that conversation around those areas happens. Step 4, which is after the meeting, the appraisal document should be written up by your team member. Sometimes this is a bit of an iterative process and may require you to record some updates as well. But once that has been completed, it should be sent to you, and we would hope that that would be completed within 2 weeks of the appraisal meeting, dependent on leave. Once both parties, both yourself and the appraisee, have finalised and agreed the final version of the appraisal form, you'll need to record that the appraisal meeting has happened via the manager portal on ESR. There is additional guidance for this, and it's on Consult HR. At the same time as recording the appraisal date on ESR, you will also need to record and submit any training and development needs for each team member and any development plans to the nominated individual for your directorate. The understanding is that this should be business managers, but this might be different depending on your directorate. The nominated individual should then collate those training and development needs and send them across to the people team for awareness, which is step 6, and then step 7 would be any follow-up. So should anything be approved or need to be discussed further, that follow-up and review process would happen. But equally, the follow-up and review process, also more formally in line with the wider appraisal process, should be to follow up on any objectives and discussion points within the appraisal in those regular one-to-one meetings that should happen throughout the year. And at this point, it may also be worth considering scheduling in their 6-month review and any recurring one-to-one calendar invites for one-to-one meetings. So as we've mentioned in the timeline, things that you can do to prepare for the appraisal as a manager. Booking in advance, scheduling the appraisal meeting early, giving plenty of time for the staff member to self-reflect. Each staff member is different. Some might be more of a reflector and require more time, so it's important to ensure they feel comfortable with the time in which they have before the appraisal meeting. You should avoid cancelling or rescheduling, as often staff members take considerable time preparing for the meeting, so should avoid cancelling and rescheduling where possible. Managers should prepare thoroughly, allocating time, noting reflections and feedback on the staff member, and ensuring feedback aligns with previous discussions in one-to-one meetings. As a reminder, there should be no surprises in the appraisal meeting. It's also important to ensure when preparing that you research any learning and development opportunities currently offered to the organisation to support any conversations around development you may need to have, and revisit any policies in line with this. You should also share objectives. That means any team objectives or directorate objectives should be shared with the appraisee before the meeting. And where appropriate, should the appraisee be newer to the organisation or not know where they are, the Bob operating model, vision, mission and values. Which moves us on to our next preparation step, aligning with the values. Managers should review the Bob values and people promise elements to ensure discussions within the appraisal align with our values and the people promise elements, and also to align our objectives and personal development plans for our staff members with those 2 models. Staff members might also be considering how their work has aligned to these values and how they've contributed to those values within the previous year. So it's important as managers that we have significant knowledge of these models to inform the appraisal discussion. You should also prepare any questions in advance of the meeting to ensure the appraisal meeting is structured and focused. And this helps us to ensure as managers we cover all the necessary topics such as progress, achievements, challenges, learning points, and future goals. It also helps the conversation remain productive and on track. When booking the appraisal meeting, you should choose a quiet and private location as well to ensure there is confidentiality between yourself and the appraisee and that they feel comfortable in their appraisal location. It also helps to minimise distractions. Maybe if it's being hosted virtually, put yourself on Do Not Disturb, close down any emails to ensure your focus entirely remains on the appraisee and the conversation that you are having. So what are the key stages and key areas of the form within the appraisal conversation? So within the new form, there's 4 key areas, and these are the areas you would wish to be covering in the discussion. So look back, and that stage involves looking back at the employee's achievements, challenges, and overall performance since that last appraisal took place. Where someone is new to the organisation, that might be a look back since the time they've joined or since the time they've started on some of their work. The second stage, looking forward and setting objectives, is about setting clear and achievable goals for that upcoming appraisal period or year. This should be supported by the third stage, which is looking forward and development needs, focusing on the employee's development needs and supporting them to create a plan to address those needs in their role. And then finally, stage 4 looks at supporting employee wellbeing. And that involves making sure you discuss their overall wellbeing at work and any support they may need to fulfill their role and remain productive within their working environment. So we'll move on to our first interactive activity. So as managers, we need to think about making appraisals meaningful. Appraisals are an opportunity to engage, develop, and motivate our staff members. Let's make them count. Let's make sure our staff members feel valued. How can you ensure appraisals are meaningful rather than a tick box exercise? For those that wish to maintain and keep up with the interactive activities in the workshop, please consider pausing the video now and reflecting on that question and jotting down some notes on either a pen and paper or an electronic equivalent to support your thinking and answering of this question. And also to cover the reflection question, which is to think about a time when you had a meaningful appraisal experience. What made it meaningful to you, and how can you replicate that experience for your team? Those that wish to answer and reflect on those 2 questions, as mentioned, please do pause the video, as the next section will focus on some of the prompts and thoughts that we had within the OD team. So, how can managers ensure appraisals are meaningful? It could be focused on continuous feedback. Feedback should be given throughout the year, not just during the annual appraisal meeting. So there should be no surprises, but it's an important point to re-emphasise any feedback that has been given and make the staff member feel valued. During the appraisal, set clear and achievable goals, ensuring both you and the appraisee have a clear understanding of the expectations of them and that you can track progress effectively between you. Providing constructive feedback during the appraisal meeting, ensuring that it is objective and specific to their role and based on observed behaviours that you have seen within them, really helps the employees understand their strengths and areas for improvement. So we'll now move on to look at one of our skills and areas we think managers should focus on in the appraisal. As managers in the appraisal meeting, employees may feel slightly nervous or slightly apprehensive, particularly if it's their first appraisal or first appraisal in the ICB. And just generally, it's important that we give our staff members our full attention within the appraisal. And to support our kind of discussion and understanding of this, the OD team have referenced the 5 levels of listening model. And this was developed by Dr. Stephen R. Covey, you may have heard of him before, and outlines 5 distinct levels of listening, each representing that different degree and step up or step down in engagement and understanding of the speaker. That first level is ignoring. The listener is completely disengaged and not paying attention to the speaker. Pretend listening. The listener appears to be engaged, but is not being genuinely attentive. Selective listening. The listener hears only parts of the conversation, typically focusing on specific bits of information that may interest them. Attentive listening. The listener is fully engaged and focused on understanding the speaker's message. And finally, empathetic listening. The listener goes beyond understanding the message to deeply empathise with the speaker's feelings and perspectives. So, what techniques can we use as managers to improve our active listening skills? We can give our full attention. As we referenced earlier, eliminate distractions, whether that be an in-person meeting or a Teams meeting, by closing things down, not having anything else with us, ensuring our phones are on silent, and focusing entirely on the employee, maintaining eye contact and nodding to show understanding. We can reflect and paraphrase, and repeat back what the employee said, but in our own words, to confirm that we've understood something and show that we are engaged in the discussion with them. We can ask open-ended questions here, encouraging employees to elaborate on their thoughts and feelings by asking questions that cannot simply be answered in a yes or no format. As managers, we can also avoid interrupting, allowing the employee to finish speaking before responding to them, showing respect, and allowing them to fully express their thoughts and feelings in discussions with us. So, using the 5 levels of listening model, it's quite clear that we should be in that level 5 within the appraisal process and one-to-one conversations with our staff members. But how can we ensure we're developing those empathetic listening skills? So, what are some signs that someone is not actively listening? Again, for those wishing to interact with the workshop, please consider pausing the video now and giving that question some thought. So, if someone is not actively listening, they could be looking at their phone or the second screen on their computer, potentially interrupting the speaker, and responding with unrelated comments that might not show an understanding of what the speaker has said. What simple techniques could you use to improve active listening? Again, for those wishing to interact with the workshop, please consider pausing the video and reflecting on the question. To improve our active listening, we could consider maintaining eye contact, nodding, using verbal affirmations to show our understanding, and paraphrase key points they have discussed. What would you do as a manager to approach an employee who is disengaged in their review process? Now, this can be really challenging, but it's important to handle the situation with empathy and understanding. Some strategies we could use as managers to make the conversation more effective are asking open-ended questions. Start the conversation off with an open-ended question to encourage the employee to share their thoughts and feelings. For example, you could ask, what's on your mind about work right now? And that might allow them to express any concerns or issues they may have that's making them feel or making them seem disengaged in their review process, and this could open dialogue for further discussion. You can acknowledge their perspective, show that you recognise and understand their disengagement, and say, I notice you seem a bit disengaged, but how can I support you? And that demonstrates your attentiveness to their feelings and thoughts and are willing to support them to help them re-engage. You can make it personal, shifting the conversation towards their career aspirations and development opportunities, discussing any long-term goals they might have shared with you, and how both you as their manager and the organisation could help them achieve those goals. This might help reignite their motivation and show that you are invested in their personal and professional growth. You could create a safe environment, ensure that it is conducive to open and honest conversation, making sure the employees feel comfortable sharing their thoughts without fear of judgment or repercussions. And that can be achieved by maintaining a positive and supportive tone throughout the conversation. And finally, we have follow-up. After the initial conversation, scheduling those regular follow-up one-to-one meetings to check on their progress and provide ongoing support, showing you are committed to their development and you're available to help them overcome any challenges that they may face. So, we've had a look at what appraisals are, why they're important, and the 5 levels of listening, and how we can ensure we develop our empathetic listening skills and ensure employees are engaged in listening within our appraisal discussion. But what does the appraisal form look like, and what would the conversation structure feel like? So the first section of the form covers the appraisee's achievements, challenges, and how they have demonstrated organisational values over the past year. And this is guided by the People Promise prompts, some of which can be seen on screen here, and these are dotted throughout the appraisal form. The second part of section 1 is for reviewing and noting progress they have made against goals from their last appraisal. And that's this section here. So any previous objectives could be recorded here, and you'd be encouraging your member of staff to record any progress they've made against their goals within this bit here. If they haven't had an appraisal before within Bob, then you could consider asking them either objectives that have been set formally or informally during their role within the ICB. And at the end, there is space for line managers to record any feedback given verbally as part of the appraisal discussion to be written up after the meeting. And that is this section here. So why is reviewing past performance important? It helps identify strengths and areas for improvement. It provides a basis for setting goals in the future goals and development plans for each staff member. It ensures that achievements have been recognised and celebrated to help ensure our staff members feel valued. It might also help identify any recurring issues or challenges that might need to be addressed. So what should you consider as a manager supporting this section? Managers should prepare by reviewing performance and bringing specific examples to the appraisal discussion. Feedback should be honest, constructive and balanced, celebrating achievements while addressing growth areas. Managers should consider emphasising that appraisals are part of ongoing feedback and not just an annual event. So we've looked at section 1 of the appraisal form. Section 2 is about setting clear and achievable goals for the upcoming appraisal period. And this is their chance to have that open, forward-focused discussion with you. This is crucial for several reasons. Guidance and direction. Objectives provide a clear roadmap for both employees and managers. They help everyone understand what they are working towards and how their efforts contribute to the organisation's overall goals, vision, mission, and values. Motivation and engagement. Clear objectives give employees a target to aim for. Knowing what is expected of them and how their work impacts the organisation can inspire employees to perform at their best. Performance evaluation. Objectives serve as a benchmark for evaluating performance and provide measurable criteria that can be used to assess whether an employee has met their goals, which helps provide constructive feedback and also identify areas for improvement. Alignment with organisational goals. Setting objectives ensures that individual goals are aligned with strategic priorities of the organisation. This alignment helps in driving the organisation forward and achieving its long-term vision. Personal and professional development. Objectives can include personal development goals, which help employees grow in their roles and help advance their careers. This focus on development can lead to higher job satisfaction and retention for the organisation. Accountability. Clear objectives create accountability by setting expectations for performance for staff members. Employees know what they need to achieve, and managers are able to hold them to account for their progress and support them in meeting their objectives. Continuous improvement. Regularly setting and reviewing these objectives encourages a culture of continuous improvement for staff. It allows for ongoing assessment and adjustment of goals to ensure they remain relevant to their role and they are achievable within the scope of their role. Key points to consider when setting objectives with staff members is to ensure that staff members' objectives are SMART. This is an acronym that you may have heard of before, but for those that haven't, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Using this SMART acronym when setting objectives as a bit of a tick list can help ensure both you as managers and staff members have a clear understanding of the meaning of their objectives and how they can be expected to be held accountable to meet them. Having SMART as a bit of a checklist can also mean that we're making the objectives as clear as possible, but also ensuring there aren't too many pressures on staff members, for example, time-bound. If all the objectives are due to be met within the first quarter, there'd be workload concerns there. So it's about balancing the objectives out, making sure we can measure them, progress can be tracked, they're specific to the role, they can be achieved within the scope of the employee's role, they are realistic and time-bound. Each staff member's objectives should also include a meaningful and challenging goal related to diversity and inclusion. And this has been mandated by the organisation. This could, for example, support race equality within Bob, but also support other areas valuing diversity and promoting inclusion across the organisation. This objective should be meaningful for that employee and also challenging to support Bob to become a more inclusive organisation that values diversity. So section 3 of the form, again, looks forward, but looks at personal development planning. And this section allows you to have further discussions with the appraisee on their learning and personal development needs. It is a structured approach to identify skills they may need to develop. And this is important because it provides clarity and direction with clear goals and a structured path for personal and professional growth, helping the individuals and appraisees understand what they need to achieve and how to get there. Motivation and engagement. Setting and working towards personal development goals can boost motivation and engagement within the organisation, giving employees a sense of purpose and a sense of direction, which potentially leads to higher job satisfaction and engagement with the organisation. Skill development. So a personal development plan can help identify areas for skill development, provides a plan to acquire new skills or improve existing skills that an employee might have. This continuous learning approach is essential for career advancement and staying relevant within the job market. Performance improvement. By focusing on specific developmental areas, a PDP can help improve overall performance. It allows employees to address any weaknesses and build on their strengths, leading to better job performance. Alignment with organisational goals. A well-structured personal development plan aligns those goals of the individual with the organisation's strategic objectives, ensuring that the employee's growth contributes to the overall success of the organisation. And finally, well-being and satisfaction. Personal development contributes to overall well-being and job satisfaction, helping employees feel valued and supported in their career journey, which can lead to higher retention rates. So, what sort of rules or models could we look to apply within the personal development planning section? So, the 70-20-10 rule is a model for learning and development that can be used when completing personal development plans. It outlines that 70% of learning comes from on-the-job experiences, such as challenging assignments, everyday tasks, learning from mistakes, and improving the quality of our delivery. 20% of learning comes from interactions with others, including mentoring, coaching, and providing feedback. 10% of our learning comes from formal education, such as training courses, workshops, and seminars. If your member of staff presented a personal development need around leadership, using the 70-20-10 rule, the AD team have developed an example of what you could suggest in each. So in the 70% on the left-hand side of the screen, that learned that on the job experience, you could encourage the appraisee or your member of staff to take the lead on a high-impact project that involves cross-functional collaboration. This will provide hands-on experience in managing diverse teams and navigating complex challenges that are presented within cross-functional collaboration. 20%, so that engagement with others, interaction with others, you could encourage them to seek mentorship or shadow a senior leader where possible within the organisation, scheduling regular one-to-one meetings to discuss leadership challenges, gain insights, and receive any feedback on progress that's been made. And then in that final 10%, attending a workshop related to leadership and management to provide them with the opportunity to learn from industry experts and network with other professionals. When thinking about personal development planning and personal development goals, it's quite common to jump to the latter 10% and think about those formal opportunities, but actually the 70-20-10 rule really provides us with some evidence to suggest that most learning and development comes from that on-the-job experience. So it's important to consider this when supporting staff members to write personal development plans. So we'll move on now to look at section 4 of the form. And this provides an opportunity to discuss additional requirements or considerations the appraisee would like to make you aware of in relation to wellbeing and what support that could be able to be put in place to support them. So why is wellbeing important? Encouraging and supporting our staff's wellbeing development really enhances performance. Employees who feel well supported in their wellbeing are more likely to perform at their best. They have higher energy levels at work, better focus, and increased productivity. Supporting staff members' wellbeing increases their job satisfaction. When employees feel their wellbeing is valued by the organisation they work for, they are more satisfied within their jobs. This leads to higher morale and a more positive workplace culture. And that in turn reduces absenteeism and improves retention, leading to fewer stress-related absences and lower turnover costs. Supporting staff's wellbeing by encouraging a positive organisational culture means that we create a culture of care and support across our organisation, enhancing teamwork and collaboration and the overall success of the organisation. For those wishing to partake in the interactive activity, consider pausing the video now and thinking about the questions you could ask during an appraisal conversation to support someone's well-being. For those that wish to carry on with the video, we have some example questions to share with you. You could ask your staff member how you have been feeling at work recently, what aspects of your work energise you, and what feels more challenging. How do you feel about your current work-life balance? Are there any stresses affecting your work that I could help with? Do you feel your workload is manageable? Would any adjustments help you work more comfortably? What helps you stay motivated and engaged at work? Are there any changes we could make to support you in improving your overall job satisfaction? Would you find it helpful to explore wellbeing resources? What's one thing I can do to better support your wellbeing at work? Would you find regular wellbeing check-ins helpful? And if so, how often? If something was affecting your wellbeing, would you feel comfortable reaching out support? And if not, what could I do to change that? So we've covered all 4 sections of the form. And at this point, it's worth highlighting that there is also an option for staff to use a neurodivergent friendly appraisal form. Traditional appraisal processes may not suit everyone's way of thinking and communicating. This form was designed following engagement with the organisation and staff networks and feedback from the staff survey, as some neurodivergent employees may find open-ended questions overwhelming. They may find the ambiguous structure difficult to follow, and the pressure of verbal discussions challenging. This form creates a more inclusive and supportive process, giving every employee an option to ensure they can fully engage in their appraisal. As a manager, please support your team members to use whichever form they find most comfortable for them to engage with. So, as we're drawing to an end of the session, it's important to highlight some of the common pitfalls to avoid during appraisal processes. Going into an appraisal meeting without adequate preparation can lead to a disorganised and unproductive discussion. As a manager, it's important to prepare adequately in advance of the meeting. Dominating the conversation and not allowing the employee to share their feedback and thoughts can be really damaging. Ensure it is not a one-sided conversation. Of course, you should ensure that you are giving your thoughts and feedback, but please give them plenty of space and time to discuss things with you, and make sure you have plenty of space and time to listen to them. Concentrating solely on areas of improvement and neglecting to acknowledge the employee's achievements can also be damaging. If you have to give any feedback that is not necessarily positive, then you could consider engaging with the praise sandwich, so to speak. You may have heard of it, but it ensures you start and end on a positive and sandwich the developmental feedback in the middle. Being too general. Providing vague or generic feedback that lacks detail can be really difficult for employees to digest. Instead, try to be specific and provide clear examples of strengths and areas for improvement, and that could reference some of the things you've observed as well. Ignoring employee development. Failing to discuss the employee's development needs and career aspirations can make them feel undervalued. Take the time to ask them about their career goals and skills they want to develop, and any support they need to progress this. And finally, ensure you follow up. A lack of follow-up and failing to follow up on the agreed actions and objectives can be difficult for employees to digest. Instead, schedule in those one-to-one meetings and that mid-year check-in at the time or just after the appraisal conversation to ensure the employee knows and has the confidence that things will get followed up, that has been discussed within the formal appraisal discussion. So, what to do after the appraisal meeting has taken place? Agree with the appraisee any additional information that needs to be captured in the appraisal form. Agree the final version of the form and ensure that this is signed off by both parties. Save and keep a copy locally. Ensure that the annual appraisal date is entered into ESR. There is a guide for this available on Consult HR. And submit the team members' training and development plan to the nominated individual within your directorate. As we draw this session to a close, I'd just like to highlight the things that we've covered during this recorded workshop. We have looked at understanding the appraisal process, what factors feed into it, and what the appraisal cycle is like. We looked at the specific steps between scheduling the appraisal meeting and following up. We've looked at how to prepare for the meeting, ensuring it's booked in advance, preparing thoroughly, sharing any objectives, revising the values and people promise elements, preparing questions, and making sure all the space is private and confidential. We've looked at the key stages of the appraisal conversation, from looking back, looking forward with objectives, looking forward with personal development plans, and supporting well-being. We've looked at the 5 levels of listening and how we can develop our empathetic listening skills and how we can engage employees that might feel disengaged with the appraisal process. We've then gone on to look at the 4 stages of the form, including SMART objectives, why PDPs are important, the 70-20-10 rule, and how we can ensure employees feel listened to when they're sharing any wellbeing concerns. We've looked at the neurodiverse appraisal form and the common pitfalls to avoid during appraisals, and finally, what to do after the appraisal. Thank you for joining me during today's recorded workshop. We hope you found it useful. Should you have any questions in relation to the content or any further questions not covered during the session, please consider reviewing the FAQs document available where the recording has been linked. And also, should those not have been answered, emailing a member of the OD team with any questions you may have outstanding. Thank you for joining us. We hope this has been valuable to you.